So, the last video slash stream that I made like this was pretty well received, so I think that making this kind of a thing that we do as a tradition from now on whenever a story chapter is kind of rolled around might be kind of nice. Unfortunately, that means that this is the last one we're going to be doing for the next 8 months, but that's just, that's just how the unfortunate reality of the situation is. Anyway, I just recently finished Ordeal Call 1, maybe like last week, and I've got thoughts. I certainly do have some thoughts. So much like the last video, we are going to be breaking the chapter down into 3 different categories and discussing each of them here. That is, there's going to be the story's overall setting, the story itself, and then the characters. Between each of these, we'll have a couple of pauses for questions. So if you think that I've missed something, or that I'm off base with a few things, or you just want to spam TTS during that time because I've muted it, feel free. We may also add in just like an extra section, maybe not as in-depth, and that's just for the combat and the fights, just because I feel like that is important to talk about because, this is still a game at the end of the day. Anyway, let's get into it. Side note, while this is not planned to be a full-on recap of the events of OC1, if you have not read it yet, I do recommend doing that before watching this, just so that you get a better understanding of like what's being talked about here, as well as saving yourself from being spoiled, because there's going to be a ton of that in this. I repeat, this will have spoilers. Alright, let's go. Start with the setting. The structure of Ordeal Call 1 is pretty fun because of how different it kind of feels from the other story chapters. The story starts with us being sucked into the Paper Moon and finding ourselves with familiar but different versions of our companions. We get to see Shion in her more traditional form, albeit as a child. And Kama is Kama. It kind of is just Kama. Kama acts the way that the community thinks that she acts, rather than the way how she actually acts, which, in fairness, is kind of hard to pick up on, considering that she's a massive pushover. This puts us in a pretty unique position, and lets us see other sides of the characters that we don't normally get to see. The world that we find ourselves in is one that is entirely digital, with AI that serves specific purposes operating throughout the Paper Moon, not dissimilar to the cells in a body. Except that all of these cells are Ronnies. All the Ronnies. Adorable little Ronnies as far as the eye can see. Yeah, I love all of them. I love all of the various ones. Chat, who's your favorite? Tag yourself. Tag your Ronnie. I think I'm a big fan of Chef Ronnie. I also like Transport Ronnie, who I couldn't put in here because her sprite was too big. Alright. Yeah, I like Ronnie's design. I like the variations that we have here. It is borderline criminal that there has not been a Ronnie servant in FGO yet. I'm hoping that at some point that we do see her. Now, the world itself, we learn, is functionally a giant computer, and as a result is prone to viruses and attacks, as well as manipulation, which are the earliest enemies that we end up fighting. The final really important thing about the setting is that the world is initially separated into equal partitions for each master, which was originally the head AI of their respective sections, now given a unique form and personality. We'll get into all of that later. These partitions govern different aspects of the computer to let it run smoothly. These were repair, transfer, grow, keep, and build, with the center area being kind of a neutral zone called defend. Each of the Prime AI gets their servant and master privileges, and in the events that they lose, either by their servant dying or they themselves getting killed, their partitions were merged with the persons that was defeated, done so by a massive spinning of the Paper Moon, which ejects the people into these safe pods where they can then be stored. Does that sound kind of weird and crazy? It is kind of an out there concept, but it's cool. I'd reckon that this is the most important part of the setting that you need to know before getting into the story at all. So, fellas, are there any questions? Brief TTS break. Any questions? Did I miss anything absolutely, like, necessary. I'm trying to think if there's really anything of note that I may have possibly just kind of glossed over or missed. I think that's a pretty good setup for the setting, without getting into all the deep, the nitty-gritty stuff with the characters. Alright, no questions. That's alright. A longer section here. So, let's talk about the story. I would say overall the story for OC1 is, in my opinion, it's fine. It's just fine. It kind of sucks because it comes off of the heels of Lost Belt 7, which was a climactic finale for the Lost Belts that involved dinosaurs, alien invasions, the president of the world doing some goofy shit. And then there was an in-between where we're headed to the true final fight. We're finally going to do it. We're going to beat the game, where we get stopped by a guy that looks like Dr. Roman, who says that we've abused the use of the extra classes, and now we have to go back. And so we're dubbed the enemies of the state, and now not allowed back into Antarctica until our social credit score is improved. This is, quite frankly, an incredibly bold move of a game to pull, and it makes sense why people were a bit frustrated with this on release. Ordeal Stall is a nickname that still haunts the community because of this decision, and until we're at the finale of Part 2 and we do a proper retrospective, I'm going to refrain from making any comments about this decision. Right now, if you want to know what I think it's kind of an interesting choice, but again, we need to see more before I make a final judgment. I need to see how it ends, I guess, before I make that final judgment call. Point being, the follow-up story to all of this was destined to be kind of viewed with a light disdain by members of the community, and this is hampered by it being somewhat of just an alright chapter all around. Like, it wasn't outstandingly well written or anything like that. It's just good. It's alright. It's more Fate, if that makes sense. Let me just kind of lay out all of OC1 for you. Part 1. We're sucked into the world and get a very long-winded explanation as to how the world works, and meet the main cast of characters to be, not counting the epilogue. This chapter has 16 sections, and I want to say maybe 5 of them are dedicated to this point of trying to build up what the world is like. The next 6 are dedicated to Giles and Zoqueen being the absolute worst and all of us having to deal with them. The final 5 are dedicated to fighting the final boss, with the exception of the final section, which is more so dedicated to the explanations of what happened and watching Indian Dragon Ball Z. I'm not going to elaborate on that point, read the chapter. I wish that they had spent more time kind of fleshing out the world itself as the story progressed, but it feels way more rushed, I guess. It feels way more like we're getting rushed through this to get to the cool things that the writer had thought of, rather than actually sitting around and lingering. It just recreated a problem that we already had solved, and that was done so many times. It's just I don't know. How many times do we have to kill either Jills or Zoqueen in the chapter? It's too much. It is too much. And then this whole setup and rehashing of something that just happened was done so that we could see how powerful Lev is. They do this so many times where they bring him out. Oh, we're the big bad monster. Okay, we assassinate. Oh, I bring back the big bad monster. Okay, well, we killed you. Oh, we bring back the big bad monster. Okay, we did all of this that way we can show you the really cool animation of Lev Lenar shooting a fucking laser beam at somebody. And, well, I wouldn't even say it's the worst effect. I'd say I didn't dislike the animation. I thought it was pretty cool. But it's very much hampered down by the point of it being very clearly done just to show, hey, we put budget into this thing. It's maybe if we had done that the first time and hadn't already killed this thing 3 times, it would have a bit more impact, but, it just, I don't know. All of that build-up was all done for the sake of the story to show that Deus Ex Machina is going to save your ass multiple times. We'll get to it. There are so many more fun and interesting ideas that could be explored by having Lev showcase how strong he is. Given that he was the main villain of Part 1, and it genuinely feels like it's a bit of a waste. What I did really like, though, is how they decided to play around with the alter ego concept. The final plan of the main villain was a misguided attempt to create an infinite amount of alter egos in order to better serve Chaldea to more efficiently win the fight for humanity. In doing so, every master and servant in the war were fragments of their original selves. The concept of alter egos in Fate is that a servant is the concept of an alter ego in Fate is that the servant, as they manifest as an alter ego, is meant to be an aspect of a what-if scenario of the servant in question. The original alter egos, the Sakura 5, were all aspects of BB that she kind of lanced away from herself to become the perfect AI. These aspects gained a personality of their own, but inextricably are still tied to BB. Whether they like it or not, they don't. Another good example of this concept is someone like Okita Alter. Okita Alter is an aspect of Okita that went on to join the counterforce. They share the same common terminal, but are essentially different beings. And there's a whole other thing as to why that is with her. But this is already gonna be a long-winded video, so I'm not gonna go into why Okita Alter is an alter. Go watch my Shinsen Gumi video; it's probably in there. Point being, conceptually, this is a fantastic plot point, and one that introduces what the Ordeal calls are meant to be, and it goes about doing that very, very well. It shows the inherent flaws of the classes and begs the question of if is it even right to use a different version of someone when in actuality this is not who they are, right? Like Okita and Okita Alter, while technically the same person, are not the same person. You know what I mean? So is it even proper to use somebody like Okita Alter in the place of somebody like Okita? Does that make Okita redundant and we no longer need her if one is stronger than the other? So do we just get rid of the original? It raises those questions about that. And we in the story, we rationalize this and accept this because even if they are not like the whole version of themselves, we would accept them for who they are regardless, thus helping us to advance our social credit score. This reveal is also paired very well with the text that we, at the start of most sections, asked. Well, I wrote that really stupidly. This is paired really well with the fact that the start of almost every single section has the prompt of "Who am I?" followed by an explanation from the corresponding character, as well as some pretty funny interactions in the cases of some of these because we get to peer into their psyches. It makes you kind of look back at all the main cast that you met from a completely different perspective, which is pretty cool. Genuinely, it's a pretty cool thing. Also, they included this amazing little thing that lets you take notes. That's in the top left corner. That is so nice. Being able to actually look at this and review things that you've learned about these people and be like, oh, that's actually pretty neat. It's like mentally taking notes on all of them. That kind of shit is awesome. I don't know why they don't do that with more of the chapters. It can't be that hard. It's just add your writer's notes as a thing so that people can go back to the story and be like, oh yeah, the barkeeper really was a fucking weirdo in Lost Belt 6, but he was cool. Yeah. Anyway, I like that a lot. Are there any questions? Take a small intermission. You talking shit about Mike now? I am not talking shit about Mike. Funny how this OC is not even on the bleached earth. I know, right? What fragment is the master? Hard to say. I don't believe they fully revealed that. It's up to interpretation. You know who I'm surprised did not make an appearance in this chapter and would have fit in perfectly? Is Tamamo. Considering that she technically helped to make the alter egos as well. Do you think they should have utilized the pre-existing alter ego in the main story? Jufu, Doman, Shito, and Ayase that are outside of the Sakura 5? I'll touch on the Sakura shit later. Do I think that they should have used them? I think it would have been cooler if they used them, but I kind of like how they went about doing it here. I guess that, well, I'll talk about it more later, but having some characters like Chen Gong show up, and like he's a different aspect from a different part of time in history is kind of interesting. I think it kind of would have been cooler to see like a different side of a pre-existing alter ego like Doman. Doman in particular, I think would be kind of interesting because while Doman is a bastard in FGO, he's still like a really, really powerful wizard, and he's often like just kind of like pushed off as being like an evil guy, and he's kind of just lives up to it. But like you could probably convince him to not be. There's probably an aspect of him that is just like he just wants to be the very best that no one ever was. Paper Moon's smart enough not to touch BB. No, actually, because well, we'll talk about it. Tamamo Cat forcibly taking over the cooking sector. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I liked a lot of the new servants that were introduced into this chapter and showing the alter ego sides of them. I think it's kind of cool to, like, for Bima, for instance, being able to get a version of him that is like from a time when he wasn't a warmonger, and getting to see that kind of warmonger's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Getting to see like a more passive version of that warrior is kind of cool. I like it. All right. Let us continue. All right, so we have established our story. We've established our setting. Oh yeah, I fucked up. I was supposed to use those. I was supposed to use all of this. I was supposed to use all of this. I'm so bad at this. Oh well. Yeah, just for people who are here, I'm showing this off in true teacher fashion, which is to say I'm showing up with a hangover, and it's all of your problem and not mine. So. Oops. Let us go on to the characters. Shall we? God damn it. That's not going to work the way I want it to. That's unfortunate. Alright. So, a story, being weak or strong, is always reliant on two major factors. How well that story is structured, and how well written are the characters living in it. Now, we've already covered the basic structure, so now we're going to talk about the characters. Let's start with who I consider to be the good characters in OC1, and for some of these, I will be including the masters and servants together. We're going to go good, neutral, and then bad. Now, these are all, of course, my own opinions and how I ended up reading these characters. If you have differing opinions, if you have differing opinions, please feel free to let me know. And we can talk about it. But yeah, let's start with the good. Duryodhana and Ayase are absolutely the stars of the show, in my opinion. Duryodhana is, for all intents and purposes, a bastard. He checks out every single woman he sees, he's quick to run away if the going gets tough, he has a high and mighty personality despite constantly being hit with the humble stick, and his plans for after winning the war are to be treated like the royalty he always wished that he was. We get a very nice look into his inner monologue where we get to see that if we ever become a liability, he will mercilessly take us out, and that he is constantly trying to find the quickest and safest way to victory, regardless of how he gets there. This is paired incredibly well with Ayase, who is the central AI of the repair partition, who is just the sweetest cinnamon roll ever. She's so adorable. I love her so much. Her wish is to have a big family with the other people of the Paper Moon and to live there peacefully peacefully while helping out others. She hates violence, can't stand seeing people suffer and die, and very much is just comes off as a huge angel for everything. The dynamic between these two comes across very much like real siblings, having a boisterous and violent older brother who gets into trouble, and a kind-hearted younger sister who scolds him and takes care of him. The interactions between these two are great. It's a breath of fresh air to see a master and servant relationship like this, where romance is not a factor, even before the reveal. It takes Duryodhana's rejection of her at the start... it makes Duryodhana's rejection of her at the start really funny, because he just starts saying he just starts saying absolutely, like... It's crazy. He just starts roasting her. Just going in being like, no, absolutely not, fuck you. Where was I? Yeah, it's just very refreshing to see. It's just a very nice thing to see. It's like the last time there was a master-servant bond like this, kind of, that I felt this strongly about as being like so well done, it would probably be Mordred and Kairi. It's not the same dynamic, of course. That was more of a father-daughter thing, but it's a similar dynamic that I'm just like, yeah, no, that's, it's good. I don't know. I don't think I'd say it's as good as that pairing, but the Mordred and Kairi one is just like a match made in heaven. It's crazy. Iori and Eivor is also pretty good. I don't know. Just something about it. Something about it is just, I'm like, that's awesome. I love that. Anyway. I kind of wish I hadn't been spoiled on the reveal for it, but, you know, this is one of those things that just happens when the game has a 2-year delay. So I was unfortunately aware that Aias was the sister to Duryodhana going in. So, you know, that kind of sucks, but, you know. But, you know, getting to see Duryodhana's arc was pretty fun, because even though he gives off the impression of someone completely unreliable, he is a super powerful warrior, and getting to see him actually flex that against his rivals is pretty fun. I like it. Next. Bhima. Bhima is the chapter's token ripped man with divine charisma, which is an archetype in FGO, which is very, very funny, including the likes of people like, Napoleon, Iskander, name them. Who are all the ripped men? Who are all the ripped men with 1,000,000 charisma? I guess you could count Orion. Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, Orion. I'd say that counts. I'm just trying to think of them off the top of my head. The ones who are ripped to the... Percival, there you go. There's another good one. Kintoki's another good one. Yeah, it's just... I love that that's an archetype. It's just enormous buff man with the charisma of a god. It's great. Anyway, Bhima occupies this space in the world that is pretty unique in that he's arguably the strongest character present that we know about for most of the chapter. He's ridiculously fast, he's immensely strong, he's kind, considerate, and reliable. If he wanted to, he could easily clean shop in a one-on-one with just about every other servant. I believe that in the fight with Kama, he has the advantage as well, which is a kind of a strange thing to say, but overall I think it just kind of came down to if he would be... I think it came down to if he needed to, he would be more focused on killing her or killing us. If he thought he couldn't beat her, he would come and kill us and secure victory. But, you know, he doesn't do that because of the influence of his master, as well as this version of him being a much more mellowed out one, thanks to him being an alter ego from when he was a chef. So, while he spends the majority of the time ignoring larger threats in order to cook, he still does show up and murder people when necessary. He's a very charming and likable character throughout the entire chapter, despite it being aggravating that he refuses to help quite often, and only really gets finally coaxed out to do so once the threat is at his door. It literally takes bombs exploding in his kitchen for him to be like, fine, I'll do something about it. Alright, next. Shion. Shout out to Melty Blood. After this is going to be Shion, who we seldom get to see in any actual, like, capacity. Like, we never see her in action. We never get to. And technically, we still don't, because this is not the same Shion. Now, here's the thing. This will probably piss somebody off. I know Shion originally from Melty Blood, so it's pretty cool to see them actually make the callbacks to this with how she has her, like, her wire that goes into people's nervous systems and brains. I'm going to pause really quick because I want you to remember I just said that. I want you to remember I said that. I think it's pretty cool to see them actually make callbacks to this. Remember that. They give a fairly well-detailed explanation as to... They give a really well-detailed explanation to the audience about aspects of her that you may not know if you've never played Melty Blood or never read through Tsukihime. Expanding on and then updating this information that you would have if you did, while making it easier to comprehend if you did not. That's important. Remember what I just said. They do spare certain aspects of her that are not as necessary to know for this context, while filling you in on the more, like, important stuff. It makes for good character building. She's all around just a pretty solid character. She serves as our Da Vinci for the chapter, but is much more clinical with how she talks, and it's very blunt. This analytical side of her makes communication with the AIs pretty easy. She also plays off of Kama very well, as the two of them have a tendency to distrust each other, as both have detected that there's something wrong about the other, but they can't really figure out why. It's very fun to see a character like Shion, who, despite being upbeat and jovial, does keep us at an arm's length because she just doesn't want us to be, like, friends with her. The whole we consider you a friend thing is very corny and played out, but I think it works well for this context, given that she is just a fragment of the original personality. In fact, I would say that this works out as well. I would say this does work out as well, because Shion actually recalls the events of the chapter and now has to grapple with this shift in emotion. Which, that's a very interesting thing that they kind of, like, just threw in there, that she retains all of it. Whether she likes it or not, or, you know, part of her now is going to have to, like, deal with the fact that we do consider her a friend, and now she knows that. I hope it creates some fun dynamics going forward with how she may or may not treat us in order to avoid things happening, or maybe she just kind of, like, embraces it. If she was ever thinking more analytically, like, okay, well, they're becoming a liability, I can get rid of them now. I don't know why she'd do that, but maybe she would. That's now a factor that's going to come into play, which I think is very fun. Alright, and that's kind of more or less the characters I would call explicitly good. Though I do want to give a small shout out to the various Ronnies. They're kind of just generic NPCs, but, you know, I like that they were all given their own unique personalities depending on their role. If you're on YouTube, feel free to let me know who your favorite Ronnie NPC is. I like the Transport Ronnies a lot, but I think I also like the Cook Ronnies. They're all very, very cute. Alright, so any questions about good characters that are not... okay, questions about good characters that are not, what about X character? Because we'll be getting into that. If you're going to ask me why not this character, well, we're going to go to that already. Just, you know, any questions about the characters mentioned. Are you good? Am I good? I'm the best there's ever been. But can we trust Shion... our Shion now? Well, we never really could trust our Shion. That's the thing. We've never really been able to trust our Shion. We are forced to trust her because she's the one with all the technology that's keeping us alive, functionally. Like, the Wandering Sea, for example, that's Shion's thing. And all of the various tech. If not for Shion, we would have been dead. How funny is the banter between Kama and Shion? It's pretty good. They pull it off very well. There's not as much as I would kind of want there to be, but that kind of falls back onto the fact that the chapter itself feels very, like, we have these very, very cool points we want you to see. And so we're going to kind of rush through the story in order to get to these cool points so you can be like, wow, that was cool. They do that a lot. We are in captive audience situation with I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't think it's a captive audience situation, but it's definitely one of those things like it's not too dissimilar to Nemo in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is it 3 men? I'm trying to remember. Is it 3 men get added onto the crew of the Nautilus, and they're functionally like they can't get out, but they have to work together in order to like not be killed functionally. And then the guy who's in charge is Captain Nemo, who is questionably trustworthy at best. And so, like, you know, we as the reader, we have some insight into Shion and what she's all about. And if you know anything about like how fate handles vampires, you kind of get a little bit more of an insight into that. Vampires and true ancestors and all that fucking bullshit. It's ironic. I don't think it's ironic. I think that was a very intentional decision to make Nemo the captain of a situation like this. Is it bad that I find it hard to understand Fate's plot terms and stuff often? No, because they keep inventing new ones. For plot, I wouldn't worry about plot too much. Just take it story by story. Honestly. Anyway, I think that's good. Let's keep going. Calling it now that part 3 is all about vampire true ancestor BS? Maybe. I would like to see them play around with it more. I want them to add Coma. My main Coma from Melty Blood into the game, into FGO in some regard, because I want to see him grab a child by the face and just fucking football spike him. Like he does in Melty Blood to Miyako. It's the funniest thing. Anyway. Yeah, that's more or less the character. No. Yeah, let's talk about the neutral ones. Before I go to the bad, I do have some neutrals, which I had much stronger feelings about the characters in Lost Belt 7 than I do in OC1. So it's having a bit of neutrality can't hurt, I think. Like, I either really liked a lot of the characters or really didn't like a lot of the characters in Lost Belt 7. The neutral was much more reserved, I guess. This time around, though, there's a lot of characters who I'm just like kind of like, on. So, let's start there. God damn it. Sakura and Medusa are going to be the first on the neutral list. They both are more or less just there to serve the plot, and that's pretty much it. Let's start with positives. This is 100% the best that Sakura has ever looked. With her farmer's hat and overalls, she is unbelievably adorable, and I would also fight God to protect her. I also admire the fact that her wish is just to continue to work the fields with everyone peacefully, because quite frankly, that's one of the better selfish wishes in Fate. It is an incredibly innocent wish that, while not solving any major problems in the world, maintains peace for all those things that she holds dear and for everyone else around here. It's great. Here's a fun fact for you. Well, the wish that she has is for people to keep having a normal life. Do I have that? Did I write that down? Did I somehow forget to write that down? I did. That's crazy. No, I didn't. There it is. Yeah, fun fact. The wish that she has for the Grail is fundamentally the exact same wish that Kentoki has for the Grail, which you learn about in 5.5. Is it 5.5? Yeah, 5.5. Which is, it's nothing big, it's nothing like fancy or anything like that. It's just I want people to live a normal life and be happy in peace, which is just the sweetest thing ever and speaks volumes for both of their character. Love her. I will fight FSN people to the death that this is the best that Sakura has ever looked. Easily. And it's not counting like BBs or anything. I'm talking about Sakura. She's so cute. I also appreciate the fact that Medusa, or that the Medusa that we get to see here, is one who seems to have a vague recollection of Sakura, and so does everything in her power to protect her. Mind you, if I saw a girl like this and I was in Medusa's shoes, I'd be like, yeah, we're protecting this one. Medusa herself in the chapter, I don't really find that interesting because it's just Medusa, but how the fans think Medusa is. I kind of wish that they played more with the Chrysaor aspect, given that, you know, that was why she even showed up in this new form at all. But it being reduced, it's just kind of being reduced to, like, she just uses it to farm, like, AI. It just kind of really seems out of character and contradictory. Like, my biggest issue with these two is that Sakura serves more as a MacGuffin for Medusa to do anything, and otherwise they really are just kind of there. It feels like they could have done more with the Sakura Medusa combination, and while it's not like egregious enough for me to call it bad, I'm gonna hesitate to call it like well executed. It does feel very much like these two would not have been chosen for the chapter if they didn't choose Zoqueen to be around, and they feel more like a let's just shove as many Sakura adjacent characters into this chapter as we can for some reason. I couldn't tell you why. Alright, next up is Kama. I don't really have too much to say about Kama. I say as I'm looking at this and it's a full page of text. Because, you know, it's just Kama again. Kama is such a she's in such a strange position as a servant when you go to write her, because it's very easy to get swept away into how people think Kama acts. This is primarily because of her summer version being so incredibly easy. Kama herself is meant to be a bit more nuanced. She's meant to be a character that corrupts the meaning of love to the point where pain and pleasure are intertwined. What I'm saying is that Kama is meant to be a Cenobite. The issue with that is how she's portrayed in the chapter, is that she has removed her constraints and is now actively seeking to be loved as well, which is something that her normal version would be frankly disgusted with. This comes in the form of her asking for head pats, trying to get rewards from us, demanding affection, etc. Now, the problem isn't that she's a fragment that acts this way, because she is a part taken out of context from the whole, right? Like, it's, of course, she's gonna act kind of like that. The problem is that this depiction does not feel different enough from how the other Fate Riders treat her already. So this fragment just feels like how people already expect her to be. Now, this is what I'm going to call, I'm going to coin a phrase here, this is what I'm going to call the Blackbeard effect. Blackbeard in FGO is an incredibly complex character if you do any research into him. He comes off as a gross stereotypical otaku who covets little girls in a way that is only rivaled by Blue Archive players. The reality of the situation is that Blackbeard is, in fact, playing it up by a lot. His various interests still ebb into otaku territory, that's fine, but the reason that he goes all out in this regard is to make others not take him seriously. If they don't consider him a threat, they will inevitably let their guard down around him, and that's when he gets you. So, this is where I'm actually going to call into question maybe one of the coolest things that they've ever put into, like, an FGO animation update. And that is that his Buster animation, I believe it would be his second Buster animation if you're doing a chain, is honestly a little bit disturbing. Now, for like the 5 people who've ever actually used Blackbeard, you probably know what I'm talking about. He has so many goofy attacks, like throwing bombs or hitting people with barrels, all with a big old smile on his face. But once he's in close, he drops the entire charade, goes deadpan, and shoots the enemy point blank in the face. There is a reason why he canonically is able to dodge someone like Shisho, and it's not just for the gags. The issue with this, though, is that while this is a core part of his character, depending on who's writing him, he may go full uberweeb, and then that's that. The perception of who he is by others and who he actually is gets skewed, and this applies as equally to Kama. Whether you feel the same about that, you can let me know. I won't say it's bad, but it's definitely not something that it's just not something I would consider to be very good either. And no, the summer attacks for Blackbeard do not affect his animations. I'm being serious. If you go and you look at literally every single attack that Blackbeard has, it's like, saying the word disturbing is maybe a little bit too much for it, right? Because it makes it sound like, I don't know, I'm trying to make like a, have you seen the top 10 most horrible secrets kept in FGO type shit. Like, I'm not doing that. But it is something, it like does send a little like a red flag comes up, because again, a lot of his attack animations are really goofy, and then he hits, so like the one before that for his Buster Chain is he comes in with a big old smile and hits you with a barrel, and then immediately drops the act, puts a gun up to your face and pulls the trigger. There's no flashes with it, there's nothing goofy about it, it's the only attack animation that he has that's like that. And he only does it when he's right up close to you. When there's no more getting away, he doesn't need to fake it anymore, he's right there, and he's going to remind you, by the way, I'm the greatest pirate that ever lived. Anyway, let's move on. Next up is Elron. I really don't have much to say on Elron either, because realistically she doesn't do anything. It's cool to see other Chaldean staff make their appearances, because there are currently... God damn it, Klidge. There are currently members left. I didn't write the number, but I did write out their names. For a refresher, these are Menoir, Sylvia, Kawata, Tomlin, Octavia, Chin, Cayenne, Marcus, and Elron. Of these, the only other ones that we have seen and been able to put a name to are Menoir, Dustin, and Sylvia. Even though we don't know if Dustin or Sylvia are alive, given that they haven't been shown since the prologue. Regardless, other than that, we really don't see the crew of Novum Chaldea like ever. Getting introduced to one member, and they are so racked by the guilt that they are unable to function, is a bit underwhelming. That is, for the character herself, as she appears in the Paper Moon. She does have a very nice arc with Bima, which I'm not going to discount that, because it is very kind of cool to see it. Bima kind of acts as like a foil, where Bima's is even more charismatic than previously thought. It just makes, it's all really just to make Bima look even better. I will say, getting a look into her mind at the end of the chapter and learning her role in Chaldea at the time is very interesting, and really sheds a new light onto like how the Chaldea staff as a whole may feel. The only problem is that I want to get to know more about Elron, but from what I've seen with the story going forward, this is going to be difficult. I could be wrong. For now, I think she's just kind of fine. Alright, and finally, for the neutral section, we have Ronnie. And this is the governing AI Ronnie, head honcho Ronnie. Ronnie is the governing AI of the Paper Moon, and is fairly similar to her namesake from Extra. She's cold, calculating, and almost entirely robotic. She barely, if ever, expresses outward emotions until the very end. A character like this is not bad by nature, and the execution of this archetype via Ronnie is done very well. Her plan as the governing AI is one that is believably contrived by a robot. I won't go so far as to say that this is meant to be a commentary on AI usage, but it is certainly a commentary on the integral differences between human thinking and robotic thinking. Let me give you a scenario. You are in a corn maze. I ask you to get through the maze in the fastest time as possible, because a family of 4 who are really excited to come to the maze will be here soon. A human will A human subject will scramble to run around the maze and find the fastest route, and an AI will simply ignore the maze and walk in a straight line from the entrance to the exit. Now, did both solve the maze by getting to the exit? Technically, yes. But in the instance of the AI, the maze is now destroyed, and that family that wanted to enjoy it, they no longer can. So, does it matter that it was solved faster? The immediate follow-up to this would be just to program the AI to go through just to follow the maze next time. But that doesn't mean that the first instance didn't happen, and that the excited family didn't have their trip ruined. On the scale of this war, for example, Ronnie is willing to potentially burn out the souls of the heroic spirits that she is using to make a theory work. If it doesn't burn them out, perfect. But if it does, then those servants will vanish and will never be able to be summoned again, sacrificing them for nothing more grand than a failed experiment. An AI will always try to find the fastest and most efficient way to get from point A to point B, regardless of the outcome, and we do see this with Ronnie. Well, why I am neutral on her is that this conclusion is so asinine that it would never work. An AI as advanced as Ronnie should have been able to figure out the flaws in this plan, and the actions that she took to defend it are also equally as nonsensical. Sniping Lev, for example, makes for a great moment in the story, but completely flies in the face of logic, especially considering that he was already been given ample time to set up his Deus Ex Machina, which presumably Ronnie would have known about as well. The sniping of Medusa as well as in order to disable her. Why shoot her to disable her? It doesn't make any sense. If Ronnie is being presented as this omniscient being with the aid of Durga, then she would already know that the Chaldeans were gonna go and see her next. There's no point in shooting Medusa then. It doesn't make any sense. It's a good idea. It's a good idea presented unbelievably, so I'm opting to put her more into the neutral territory. All right. Any questions, very briefly, before we go to the bad? Once again, do not ask me what about X character, because if you haven't seen the character, they're coming up. I liked how Elrond's story played out. Survivor's Guilt was interesting to see in a setting like FGO. No, I agree. I guess my issue is that we didn't get to see enough of it. I want to see more. We were given a teaser for it, but not enough to get me I want to see more, but it's not enough for me to be okay. Knowing FGO, are they going to address this again? Probably, but it's going to be in fucking 2 years. Could you explain Medusa here? She has aspects of his children and maybe Athena. No. This is the version of Medusa who has possession of her child, Chrysor, and is a mother of monsters kind of thing, but not Gorgon. Aren't there 2 Elrons now, or am I wrong? There's only one Elrond. Unless you mean at the very end of the chapter where there's the head AI Elrond who's now in charge, and then Elrond out in Chaldea, in which case, yes, there are 2 Elronds, but I highly doubt that we're ever going to see Elrond in the Paper Moon again. I don't think it would make sense to do that. Alright. Let's keep going. Let's get to the bad. Let's start with Lev and Lan Ling. I'm going to be pretty light on this because I've already aired my complaints with Lev in the chapter, but he really does just feel like a wasted potential. The primary issue with him is that he is very much a plot device bundled up into a reference. Is it cool to see Lev again? Sure. But his whole role is just to be, remember me? I was relevant 7 years ago. Check out my cool future sight magic. Alright, see ya. And then he gets shot and then he's dead. I'm genuinely disappointed with how he came out of the chapter after all of this time. It's just it's just he's relegated to being a battery, and it's just like it just sucks. It just really sucks. And then Lan Ling doesn't really do anything the whole chapter. He shows up, talks about how he's a tool, gets turned into a tool, and then dies. I wish to be a tool who's used by a master. Oh god, I'm a tool who's being used by a master. I've now learned that I don't ever wish to be used as like a tool by a master. Great character arc. Fucking fantastic. Like, I don't know. I get the fact that he's meant to be a fragment of Lan Ling when he just wanted to be useful to the Empire, but good God. I don't have much to say about them either way. I'm just very disappointed. I still think that Lan Ling was a bad choice. Is it cool to see Lan Ling get more screen time? Yeah. I think it's very cool, but I just am like... It almost doesn't count because this aspect of Lan Ling is so not relevant. Whatever. Next up, Durga. Durga, as a villain, is boring. There is functionally no build-up to her reveal. It's spoiled by the banners, and she serves as a stereotypical big bad who just shows up and can't be controlled. The Kali aspect is pretty fun, and the idea that she wants to dance to summon her husband is pretty fun. But with functionally no build-up to this outside of her shooting 2 people, and Medusa seeing her silhouette, it just doesn't land. In her favor, though, them actually animating her dance is a very nice touch, but honestly, she as a character is just very boring. Hell, I would almost go as far as to say that it feels rushed. Also, and this may be controversial, what was the obsession with Sakura in this chapter? I touched on it a little bit earlier, but like, what is the obsession with Sakura in this chapter? We have Sakura, we have Kama, we have Durga, we have Bibi, we have Medusa, and we have Zoqueen, all in the same chapter. Is it because it's an alter ego chapter and Sakura was the original creator of them because of Bibi? Yeah, probably, but still, I don't know. I don't know. It just feels very oversaturated. Like when how many people is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. When 4 of your, well, 3.5, because BB like just kind of shows up one time. When 3 of your characters, 3.5 of your characters are all the same modeled character. And then there's also Medusa, who's obsessed with her, and then Zoqueen, who is like, you know, I'll talk about him. It's just like, I guess. Anyway, it's oversaturated. I did not care for her. Next up. It brings me, speaking of Zoqueen, it's taking me to my least favorite inclusion in this entire chapter. It's Zoqueen and Bluebeard. Let me start with this. Bluebeard showing up as a part of the person that was Jill DeRay is a very interesting concept. We have seen it happen already with Caster Jills, but this one feels much more authentically Bluebeard, if that makes any sense. He's a daunting, sadistic serial killer who summons creatures that devour young women and empower him. When he has his kaiju form, which I genuinely hate looking at, and I mean that as a compliment. Oh, sorry. Then he has his kaiju form, which I genuinely hate looking at, and I do mean that as a compliment. It's meant to be horrific, but what this all culminates to with Jills is that he's just very, very one note. He walks around and kills people, and now everyone has to deal with him. Then he retreats and tortures more Ronnies, and then he comes back, attacks, and kills people. And he goes back and tortures more Ronnies. And then that's his whole character for the entire chapter. Until we end up having to kill him. I'm not against there being a villain who is horribly evil for the sake of being horribly evil, but it just kind of falls flat with Bluebeard. He feels more like an obstacle as opposed to like a fleshed out character. I will say, I do really dig what they've done with the design for him here. I think it's very, very fun. It doesn't change very much with Jills, but it's enough that you're just like, God, that I kind of fuck with that. And all of this is not at all helped by Zoqueen being here. I mentioned previously that I thought that Shion being in here with abilities from her origins was cool because they explained what her stuff is so you don't feel lost. Remember when I said to remember that? Zoqueen just shows up and is Zoqueen from zero. He uses his worms, he puppets people around, and he's a self-centered, horrible brat that is even more, and then an even more self-centered and horrible old man. They do not elaborate on what the worms are, why he's able to regenerate from them, why they can control people, or anything like that. You just kind of have to assume that that's something that he can do, which, if you've never seen Zero or Stay Night, is kind of frustrating. Even then, I've seen and read both and still don't recall the full details of the worms, so having even just a brief explanation would have been helpful. He is 100% just included to give the reader the moment of Kama, a Sakura face, killing Zoqueen. That's the only reason they decided to include him. This moment means nothing to people who only know FGO. This is skirting the whole gatekeeper bullshit of they should know this or they're not a real Fate fan shit. Like, it's not even that. Get over yourself, drink some water, you dehydrated, dry-lipped losers. My main point is that when you build up the villain that's there for half the chapter as a reference that only some people are going to get and sacrifice everything else about them, then there is no point. It is not even a villain you love to watch. It's not even a villain you love to hate. He's just annoying, and I hope that he stays dead. But he doesn't. He just keeps coming back. It is fan service, but it's fan service done in such a way that it's just like, if you don't know, it's pointless. Like, again, fan service done well is with Shion. You get to learn about Shion's, like, magical thread that she can use to control people. Here's all the abilities that it's able to do. She can do this, this, and that with all that. Also, she's kind of vampiric. You're learning all of these things with her as you go. And they flesh it out very well. With Giles, it's just, I have worms, and also I can become the worms. And also, if I die, I am also worms. Okay. Like, it really does feel like they just completely forgot about the fact that he's supposed to be an AI of the person, like an alter ego of the person, and instead just wrote, oh yeah, no, this is just Zoqueen. It's just Zoqueen. Like, we're just gonna ramp up his, like, sadism a little bit, but it is just Zoqueen. Like, there's no nuance or anything. It's just, this is who he is, and now you have to deal with him, and he's a fucking asshole. It's done so poorly. Anyway. Oh yeah, one other character that shows up that I don't have a rating for, I was more just like, what the fuck, is BB. BB just shows up in the chapter for some reason. I mean, I know why, because she created the alter egos in fucking Extra, but I'm just still just like, why? With no build-up, she just appears in, like, Kama's brain and is like, hey, I'm BB. You downloaded Bonzi Buddy, now you gotta deal with me. That's what BB stands for, by the way, if you didn't know. Bonzi Buddy. I didn't even know it was him until I saw his old man form. That's fine, but it's just it just feels poorly executed. Anyway, any questions? I've seen a copy paste about Kama like 3 different times. A bit of a rant here. See, I don't mind authors leaning into Kama's nugget or temptress aspect of the personality, but leaning too far to either side while not taking into account the nuances that make her interesting, to me at least, feels like... Well, okay, that is why I have been saying throughout this video, for a couple of different characters, they're writing them as the community views them, and so whether that's done intentionally, that way, like, it's harder for people to realize what's different, is up in the air. But there's definitely an aspect of it where it's just like, if the community at large has a headcanon for how Kama is going to act in certain situations, and then she acts that way in these situations, then no one is being like, well, what's wrong with Kama? I threw an eyebrow up when she was just like, yes, head pat me, dote on me. I was just like, no, Kama is not like, she is not like that. That is not the kind of person that she is. So the fact that they were just like, yeah. I mean, I bet a bunch of people read that and was like, yeah, no, of course Kama's like that. She's a pushover. She loves the Master of Chaldea. It's like, you're missing so much, brother. Oh my goodness. Sometimes the curtains are more than just blue, brother. I'm telling ya. Sorry for the long text. Don't apologize. But she does. They had it all right. Mods, draw and quarter that guy. All right. Let's move to a conclusion where I'm going to wrap this up all with a nice little bow. If I had to put together... What the fuck? This is not Balatro. That scared me. I have a sneeze coming on. If I had to put together my final thoughts for this and rank the chapter overall, I would give it a 6 out of 10. I think that it has a solid start for like a main story chapter, and then it just kind of peters off until the very end, and then everything gets explained. This is meant to be the alter ego chapter, and while re-examining it from the retrospective lens, it's very cool to see the connections there. There are still some glaring flaws in the whole thing. I won't go so far as to say that it was confusing, because the explanations of the alter egos as a class at the end is very enlightening. I just wish that they had played with the concept a bit more out in the open, rather than just trying to hide it all into a deep lore dump at the very end. Like, it's very cool to look back and be like, oh, this is what they meant, and oh, this is what they meant, and oh, this is what they meant. It's cool to do that with some things, but like when so much of the story is meant to be like, you should have been like playing detective this whole time. I'm like, okay. I didn't know that's what I was signing up for, but that's alright. I don't know. Just a difference in preference for storytelling, I suppose. Some people may like that a lot more than I do, so, you know, that's completely subjective. Now, oh yeah, just, you know, you back on this. Why did BB show up at the end? We already talked about that. Like, I know why, but it's just like, yeah. I think that I will say, it is very funny to me that the logic given as to why BB is able to manifest in the paper moon is because she is BB, and the paper moon is still technically a moon. That is the legitimate reasoning as to why she's able to manifest there. Which is... like... it's a decision. It's a decision. I don't know. It's like... just, let me paint a picture for you, shall I? Imagine that we're watching a movie like... what is it? 1917, like a World War I movie or something like that. It's like a very, very serious like movie. It's not a comedy. It's just very, very like serious. We're in like a war, and all of a sudden, a guy in a clown outfit grabs the camera and puts his face in it and says, "Hey man, how's it going?" and then walks away. I don't know. That's kind of the how it felt seeing BB just show up. Is just like, Jesus Christ. Why are you here? Why are you not helping us? Yeah, it's just, it is jarring. It's just like, when she showed up, I physically recoiled while reading. I was just like, what the fuck? Why is BB here? Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of the execution for things left much to be desired. I do understand why we're not, like... why, after not getting the main story chapter for, like, a year after this, people were really frustrated with the game. Like, I don't know. People... I'm sure some of you remember, but, like... when they dropped OC1 and then didn't give us a story chapter for 8 months, that was probably the closest that I think people were like, oh, the game might actually be, like, dying. And, you know, since then, we've realized, like, no, they were just cooking shit. Probably some behind the scenes bullshit was going on, but they were cooking some shit. But, like, before that, we were like, oh, dear God. Yeah, blame Sony. When in doubt, blame Sony. And you know, that said, this feels more like it's like a small hiccup that will lead us into what a lot of people consider to be a chapter as good as Lost Belt 6, which is Ordeal Call 2. So, I'm interested to see how this all develops. You know, I think that as the starting chapter to kind of introduce us to the subject, it does a just okay job of it. I wish they had done more. I wish that it all feels very rushed. I couldn't tell you the reasoning as to why that is, but there are things I wish had been done better. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I've heard OC2 is... genuinely, I think there are people who believe that OC2 is as good as Lost Belt 6. And, you know, if the census is anything to go off of, Lost Belt 6 is the number one for a lot of people, and OC2 is the pretty close second. So, we'll have to see. I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, for those of you on YouTube, hey YouTube, check out my socials. Join us live on twitch.tv, where you can participate in this chat room and tell me why I am wrong or not. Alternatively, go check out all the other stuff. We got a merch store. You can buy my hats. Purchase my hats. Other than that, you know, keep your chin up, fellas. Peace out. Big love. Let me know what you thought in the comments of the YouTube video about the OCs. Or OC1, rather. Otherwise, peace out, fellas. Keep your chin up. Bye-bye.